Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Alex Coffey, Market Strategist at TD Ameritrade, for an update on technical levels to watch in the Nasdaq-100 and Vol-Q. It's great to see you, Alex. Happy New Year. And before we get into technical levels to watch, I want to pull up the TD Ameritrade heat map here, because just like 2022, 2023 is having a tough go to start the year in trade.
No doubt about it. And two of these boxes here within this heat map stick out more than others. Those, of course, being Apple and Tesla. Of course, this is a market cap weighted heat map. So the bigger the rectangles, of course, the more important, or at least the bigger mathematical, I guess, calculation that they're going to be in terms of the index weighting. And so Apple and Tesla, two of the bigger components, and two of the brighter red, indicating some pretty big down moves. As you talked about, obviously not the look that bulls were hoping for here to start things off. But there's two really interesting stories. Apple, of course, weaker on kind of reports that they're going to be cutting back on MacBook, Apple Watch, and AirPods in terms of production on some demand concerns. So that's something to watch here. And then, of course, Tesla adding to all the surrounding kind of uncertainties with the company. Disappointed on some delivery numbers as well. So two pretty big moves, two pretty important components in the NDX here to kick things off.
Yep. And to your point, Alex, it has so much influence the heavier that the weighting is, which is why we see it under pressure relative to the other indexes. So with that said, let's take a look at fresh technical levels to kick off 2023. What are you looking at in the Nasdaq-100?
Yeah, no doubt about it. As we take a look at this is the same chart that we've been looking at really for the better part of several months now, Jill. And I think it's a fun one because it's quite simple. Uptime technical analysis is best looked at from a simplistic standpoint. And so we have sort of our traffic light setup of price levels on the Nasdaq-100 that just goes back to the early parts of last year in the month of April. So let's call it a little bit over, let's say, or around a 9-month chart on this one. But ever since the Nasdaq-100 broke down through that 13,500 point level, it's mostly remained below that. That's our level of kind of resistance up at the top that we have that red line indicating. Then in the midway point around 12,000 is our yellow light. It's acted as a pivot point most recently. It's still a critical level, but we're really circling and focused on that bottom portion where we have the yellow price or the green rather price level near the basing point of the Nasdaq's price performance over the last year. That's at the 10,500 point mark. And so while it's not perfect, we are approaching that level. And again, everything is in sort of rounding and sort of areas as opposed to particularly exact points when it comes to technical analysis. But we're rounding out to a level that's been an area of support in recent months. And bullish investors may see that as an opportunity to increase risk if we get down there, which we are nearing at the moment, about 400 points away.
And finally, Alex, when you take a look at Vol-Q, which of course is the Nasdaq-100 Volatility Index, how is that moving in relation to the Nasdaq-100? Because I remember talking towards the end of 2022 that it wasn't as elevated as one might expect, despite the volatility that we saw in the equity market.
Yeah, and this is the interesting piece here as we kind of go into this new year and focus shifts possibly from things like inflation dominating the headlines, monetary policy, maybe to more about economic uncertainty. We talked about Apple and Tesla's concerns from a fundamental standpoint here today. We go into a new year with new uncertainties, and we look at the Vol-Q, which of course is volatility on the Nasdaq-100, and it's not reflecting the same level of uncertainty that we saw at previous points when we were at this level of trading in the index. And so that can go kind of twofold. One, it maybe reflects the kind of the known nature of the uncertainties that affect the market, but it also could lend credence to the fact that maybe there's more downside to be had despite that level of uncertainty before we really get that feeling of capitulation. What I would say is it's notable that it's at a different level. I think shows that the fear is not the same level, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the coast is clear going forward, Jill.
All right, Alex, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.